Great. Hi, everyone. And I'm so glad to see all of you still with us for the entire day. And I hope you've enjoyed this session so far. I'm Dr. Ray Hakim. I'm pleased to call Nashville home. I work for Vanderbilt University, which is also in Nashville, seeing a few patients and mentoring renal fellows, but frankly speaking, taking it easy a little bit after a long professional career. I'm also involved in some clinical and educational activities with patients not yet on dialysis, CKD patients. I'm also very honored to be on the board of directors of AAKP and also on the medical advisory board. Today's closing session, the life cycle of devices, diagnostics, and technologies, is a nice complement to the previous session, which talked about drug development. And in a sense, my colleagues here on the podium will talk about device development and how complex and complicated that is, also just as much, if not more, than drug development. So like the session before, we too will focus our talk on advancements and innovations being made in the renal field, and we'll highlight some of the companies working hard to develop devices and treatments that will really improve the care of patients and their quality of life. Many of you, if not most of you, not only have to take drugs for all kinds of medical issues when you're on dialysis, but also you are dependent on the dialysis machine, whether it's peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis, to maintain your life and your lifestyle. So this session will focus on devices. Now, I also want to mention something that I think is important, which is that for companies to develop new products, the most important basic element also is that they have to check it and test it on patients. And if they're working on a device that helps patients on dialysis, then patients on dialysis need to participate in those trials so that we learn how to do it better. We learn how to, whether it works or it doesn't work, but more importantly, how to make it better. So my point to you is you as patients may also help in the development of these drugs and devices by participating anywhere from participating in phone calls and interviews, telephone interviews, or focus groups. And one of the things that AAKP does is to send you notices of these focus groups and so on. And so I hope you as patients will be willing to participate, or at least, contribute to give your opinion on the websites or on any number of the social media that Paul Conway mentioned to you. So companies like the ones joining us here are looking to you, the patient, the family member, to learn what's important to you, what treatments, what the device, the technology do you want, do you need to make a positive impact on your life by participating in those surveys and by participating in those clinical trials. So let's continue on focusing on improving the care of the devices and the care of the patients, and also work together to make a positive difference in the future. Let me next introduce today's panel. Daniel Call is the Vice President of Product Management at Next Stage Medical. Some of you, maybe many of you, are already using that device. He started his career at Next Stage in a system engineering role, contributing to the development of the original system, One Cycler. He subsequently pursued an MBA and held a business analysis and product leadership position at Armstrong World Industry. But in 2010, he saw the light and returned to Next Stage in a product management position and has been involved in international marketing and product management roles in the organization. Dr. Shannon Dahl is a co-founder of Humacyte and a cutting-edge innovative company leading the way in regenerative tissue research, that is, making new tissues, possibly making new kidneys, and we'll hear from them. Dr. Dahl's leadership experience has spanned the technology, product, corporate, and commercial development. And joining Dr. Dahl is colleague Dr. Jeffrey Lawson. I've known Dr. Lawson by sharing a cab several months ago in a very rough ride in Washington, D.C., but we enjoyed the discussions. He's Chief Medical Officer for Humacyte, and he's also a physician scientist and clinically practicing vascular surgeon and actively pursuing basic translational and clinical research. Our final panelist, last but certainly not least, is Dana Mendenhall. Dana is the Senior Director of Solutions Therapy and Services Marketing for the U.S. renal market of Baxter Healthcare. Many of you, again, may be using Baxter product. And Dana is responsible for driving accelerated growth of peritoneal dialysis in the U.S. market. So as we begin today's session, I'll share that much of Dr. Fadam's presentation on treatment development and the time and the process and the investment that it takes to develop drug products also applies to devices and products, as you will hear from this product. Just to give my colleagues more time to make a presentation, I myself will not have any slides, but I'll call on Dr. Daniel Call from Next Stage to start with the new presentation. Dr. Daniel Hall, as I mentioned, is from Next Stage Medical and connected to healthcare platform Next to Me and products in the pipeline. Dan.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Daniel Call. It's a great pleasure to be here representing Next Stage today. As was mentioned, I've been with Next Stage over 9 years, and I have to say it gets more and more exciting every year. Indeed, just since I last spoke at AAKP in 2014, an incredible amount of activity has happened just in that 2-year period that I'm going to be talking about today. One of the reasons it gets more exciting is that the number of patients on home hemodialysis keeps growing. So this chart shows the number of patients receiving the benefits of home hemodialysis since 1990, and it shows just how much progress we've made in the U.S. As you look at this chart, you can see a sharp turn upwards in 2005, which was the year Next Stage launched the System 1 cycler. That innovation literally changed the face of hemodialysis care for thousands of patients. And around the world, we now have over 8,000 patients using the System 1 today. So what is it about the System 1 that made a difference? And if you're not familiar with the System 1, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today, but I encourage you to step outside to where some of our patients are actually using it in an RV outside. You'll be able to see the system and talk to folks that are actually using it day in and day out for their therapy. So what is it that makes a difference, and why does that matter for future products coming from Next Stage? The answer is that Next Stage approaches hemodialysis with 3 key principles in everything that we do and in everything we develop. You'll see those principles in the System 1 and how it changed home hemodialysis, and you'll see it in the products I'll be talking about today. So what are those principles? First, and most importantly, is simplicity. The fact is, simplicity, making things easy, is actually a pretty hard thing to do, but it's where we focus every day. It's what we think about for every product, is that it has to be simple for everyone, for the patients, for their families, centers, nurses, the doctors that prescribe it. Next Stage, every product's designed from the ground up with that end user in mind. So from the beginning, with the System 1, we didn't have to start with legacy products and try and make them fit into a home space, into a new space. We could start with a blank sheet of paper and create something that would be approachable and easily learned by patients and other users. So we did that with the cycler, we did it with the PureFlow SL, and we've done it with the next generation products I'll be talking about today. Simplicity is at the core of everything we do. Second is clinical flexibility. Hemodialysis can be delivered in a wide range of frequencies, durations, and doses, and NxStage strives to support that for providers and patients alike. Many of our recent products have been aimed at expanding the options available to you and to your doctors. From the beginning, simplicity was most important, but clinical flexibility is kind of the opposing pole to that. We can't get simplicity by saying one size fits all. And finally, we designed to create products that enhance provider confidence. So when a provider sends a patient home to dialyze, they're trusting the equipment to provide the therapy in a safe and effective manner. There aren't any techs or nurses to intervene at the drop of a hat. And so through a combination, again, of simplicity and also rigorous validation, we strive to build equipment and processes, such as our tech support, that can build providers' confidence in sending patients home. So today I'd like to talk about some products and therapies we've recently launched or are actively developing. And every one of them is an example of how we are reinventing hemodialysis through this focus on these three principles. The first product I'm going to spend some time on today is Next to Me, our connected health product. We launched Next to Me to all dialysis centers in the US earlier this year. Next to Me is made up of an iPad app used at home and a web-based Clinician Portal used by the home hemodialysis nurse. This creates a link for information from the cycler, the System 1 cycler, to flow to the app, and from the app to then flow to the Clinician Portal at the nurse's office. From the patient's perspective, Next to Me provides three key benefits. First, it simplifies many of the activities that surround hemodialysis. So the app collects weight and blood pressure from Bluetooth-connected devices. It collects medications that are taken and the treatment parameters directly from the cycler. And you can enter notes, and these will be passed on as part of the treatment when the session is over. And you can also use the app for two-way text messaging, essentially, within the app back to the nurse, even when you're not in treatment. Second, it provides an expanded view of what's happening inside the system during treatment. So it gives a trend of pressures over time, a snapshot of your time remaining, and a number of other parameters that are helpful for patients while they're treating. And third, and perhaps this feature more than others gets patients excited, the app contains the full documentation for the cycler and presents that information when and where it's needed. So if the cycler alarms, the iPad app will also alert the patient and provide immediate access to troubleshooting steps to deal with that alarm. So no more flipping through a book to find the right section, just the information you need when and where you need it. On the clinic side, the benefits of Next to Me are delivered through what we call the Clinician Portal. This web tool allows easy access to patient run history, delivery of flow sheets immediately after the treatment is completed, and also has alerts to draw attention to treatment sessions that didn't meet expectations. So in the example shown here, you can see the red flag there in the middle of the screen. That's appearing because the patient didn't achieve their dry weight and they cut the treatment short. Also, if a patient misses multiple treatments, that can be flagged so that a nurse knows that they need to take some action and reach out to the patient. We're very excited about this product and the opportunity it gives us to revolutionize home hemodialysis yet again. But don't take my word for it. Here are some quotes from some of the early users that we've had. I'll hit some highlights. From the nurse side, Next to Me allows us to better track treatment compliance, doing caring from afar. Nurses feel this enhances, one nurse had two patients that were under-dialyzing, which had been hard to detect prior to Next to Me. Once the nurses could see firsthand what was happening, they could coach those patients back to the proper therapy. Nurses feel that this enhances their ability to care, giving them the ability to jump in right away on issues that come up. One nephrologist whose center was using Next to Me told us about how patients felt more confident and supported. Another nurse shared a story that really highlighted the value of seeing treatments more quickly. They had a new patient who didn't understand the idea of dry weight. He was taking off the same volume every treatment and consistently failing to achieve target. So he was gradually increasing his weight. They were able to intervene quickly and felt particularly grateful for Next to Me as this patient also had a cardiovascular condition. One program told us that they find issues worth following up on every day. So we've been hearing from patients as well, and I'd like to share a few quotes from them or from nurses relaying what they've said. One nurse said, "We're seeing patients more engaged in their treatment." Patients said, "I love the iPad app. I really believe Next to Me enhances the value of the whole NxStage system." Next to Me provides patients with confidence, a sense of security. I appreciate that nurses can monitor and follow up. I love seeing the pressure numbers on the screen. And one nurse told us the ability to send notes from patients to nurses was being regularly used by her patients. So it's clear that nurses and patients using Next to Me get a lot of value and satisfaction out of it, but what about hard data? So we've had enough patients using this now that we can measure how this actually affects therapy choice. So first, we've seen the therapy discontinuation rate among Next to Me users, on NextStage, drop by 32% after 1 year. We've also looked at those who were new to home hemodialysis and seen a 44% reduction in the discontinuation rate. And it gets even better. When we look at the training graduation rate of patients using Next to Me during training, we see the rate of graduation going up by 30%. So it's clear that Next to Me has a beneficial impact on patients' experiences with home hemodialysis. And we believe this product strongly proves our demonstration, our commitment, to simplicity and provider confidence and the results that can bring. So what about clinical flexibility? I'd like to take a quick look back at how NextStage has been focusing on clinical flexibility as well. For many years, we promoted the benefit of frequent home hemodialysis to the point that some people began to think that was all you could do with NextStage. And while our single-use disposable cartridge does make frequent use more possible, that wasn't all it could do. So in 2013, we launched a dosing calculator to help doctors better understand the capabilities of the System 1. And we've seen incredible adoption of that tool, and it's become a part of the standard operating procedure of sorts, with a significant and visible impact on prescribing trends. In 2014, we built on the success of the dosing calculator by launching the System 1S, which increased the dialysate flow rate capabilities of the cycler by 50%. This gave more options to fitting a therapy into a patient's life, and it too has been enthusiastically adopted. So now larger patients whose lifestyles may not accommodate 5 or 6 treatments per week, and many others have seen the benefits of the System 1S. But what I'm here to talk about in a little more depth today is something that has launched since the last time I spoke here, which is nocturnal home hemodialysis. So nocturnal therapy has been studied for years, but not until the last year, or in very end of 2014, has there been a system cleared to provide this therapy in a patient's home. And like all therapies delivered by the System 1, it'll come with all the benefits many of you already know. Same simple interface, simple installation, water-saving dialysate generation, and a simple disposable cartridge. Why are we excited about this and bringing this to doctors, nurses, and patients? Well, because it provides significant clinical and lifestyle benefits to patients. Studies have shown good data on survivability, heart health, and blood pressure control. It's shown quicker recovery after dialysis sessions and may also improve exercise capacity. Patients may experience a greater sense of being in control of their lives, and I'll share some experiences from patients in a moment. And frequent nocturnal hemodialysis has been associated with improvement in sleep apnea symptoms, reduction in phosphate binders, and given that we're discussing home hemodialysis in general has been associated with increased survival, even regardless of frequency. What have patients said about their experiences on nocturnal home hemodialysis? A few quotes. I can have a job and pursue my interests again. My life went from spending all my spare time in my bedroom to going back out into the world and being part of it again. I have energy I haven't had in a long time. By bringing to market the first and only device cleared by the FDA for nocturnal home hemodialysis, we're thrilled to help patients realize these benefits in their home. Since its launch, we've seen rapid adoption of this therapy at scores of centers across the country. If you're interested to learn more, I suggest you look for Eric at the NextStage van outside. He's an experienced nocturnal user attending the conference. Oh, and there he is right over there. You can look for him here too. So I shared some of our recent launches to highlight NextStage's commitment to those 3 key principles. And now I'm going to pivot and talk a little bit about products that are still in our pipeline. So our next generation home hemodialysis system, which was publicly announced late last year, but not yet on the market, is going to take our experience from over 14 million treatments to further advance home hemodialysis. On the clinical flexibility side, we'll be continuing to increase the dialysate flow rates the system can offer. But things get really interesting when it comes to dialysate generation. We'll be offering on-demand bicarbonate dialysate for home patients for the first time. Of course, if you're familiar with PureFlow SL, you're going to recognize a lot of the key strengths of that product. So it's going to continue to use the robust performance of deionization for water purification and have the ability to work with existing plumbing, existing electrical outlets, no expensive home modifications. The cycler will be enhanced by a powerful new touchscreen. We're simplifying the priming procedure to make it even more hands-off for patients. In fact, just last month, the beginnings of this system appeared on the market with our new enhanced priming procedures. For use with current and next generation systems, they're designed to reduce manual involvement in the priming process. So feedback from patients on this new feature has been overwhelmingly positive, so we can check one off. What does this mean for you overall? We're removing the batch limitation, reducing interactions during prime, and reducing walk-up time. We'll be moving towards a faster dialysis flow rate, and on top of this, the amount of dialysate concentrate that you'd need to handle will be reduced, further lowering just the work involved in doing home hemodialysis. And as we look to the future, NxStage is thinking bigger than just home hemodialysis. We're also committed to launching a revolutionary approach to peritoneal dialysis in 2017. Our PD cycler will eliminate the need for regular large shipments of bags into patients' homes, replacing that with concentrate mixed at point of care. Pre-connected disposables and automation will improve setup for each session, and the disposable will meet flexible prescription needs. So the system will generate appropriately physiologic fluids. To give you a concrete example of how easy PD setup can be, let's look at the 4 steps on this slide. So rather than stringing multiple bags together using aseptic technique, our system will allow the disposable with its concentrated dialysate to be loaded into a slot. Incoming water and outgoing drain line, the outgoing drain line are just connected using a simple one-step connection. And the fluid provided to the cycler is sterile and ultra-pure, and the system will test the dialysate prior to each PD fill cycle. A large, easy-to-use touchscreen will provide voice guidance, tactile feedback, and animated guidance to facilitate training. Using the NxStage system, PD becomes a very different experience for a typical patient. By shipping concentrates instead of premixed fluids, we'll reduce storage and shipping weight dramatically. Setup time also drops significantly as aseptically spiked bags are replaced by a single locking connector. And finally, the use of a single cartridge, regardless of the formulation, simplifies in-home inventory management. So in summary, I just want to return to those core values that permeate NxStage products: simplicity, clinical flexibility, and provider confidence. As you've seen in the past, our commitment to these principles helped revolutionize home hemodialysis. As I've shown you today, our continued commitment has resulted in some of our newest offerings: Next2Me Connected Health, Nocturnal Home Hemodialysis, and the soon-to-arrive next-generation systems for hemodialysis and PD. Thank you.
Because each of the speakers will have a different topics, I was wondering whether anybody had a question specifically for Lou. We'll also have time for questions at the end, but I thought we could.
Thank you. Lou Diamond. So the, in Next2Me product. So are you contemplating in some of the next releases to collect additional data from the procedure in addition to what you've currently collected? And related to that, would some of that data be available for sharing with hospitals and or the dialysis unit to support quality measures?
So the data that gets collected today is all shared with the center that provides the dialysis care, and it can be integrated automatically with an EMR system, so that all that data exchange can happen. We're always taking feedback from clinicians where they, if they say, hey, I'd like to collect this kind of data, or I'd like you to collect it in this way, and we've made some of those changes over time. And our future roadmap will be responsive to those kinds of requests.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's an electronic health information product rather than a dialysis procedure product per se.
It's kind of a hybrid because it's giving you some insight into the actual therapy as you're delivering it. So it's tied to the machine in that way, but it also has that health information.
Very elegant, thank you.
Hi. Last year I attended and I heard the initial presentation on the Next2Me device. And my son at that time was on the NxStage home hemodialysis machine. It was not available to us at our center where we went. Subsequently, though, on November 9th, he did get a transplant, so there was no need to pursue that. My question is relative to the fact, is it now currently available and accessible to every dialysis center, like since it's been on the market for a while, or is it still like I was told at the time that it was like a training issue, or whether the center was willing to accept the adoption of this device or whatever to get it there. I just want to know, for the betterment, because I am an advocate for, treatment of kidney disease and dialysis, and I'd like to put the word out there to other people who are in the same situation doing home hemodialysis to have that.
So it's available from Next Stage's perspective. Whether a center has adopted it or not is up to the center. So certainly if you're a patient, or if you're a patient advocate and there's a center that doesn't have it, I'd love to have you apply some pressure from the ground up on that. It's
I actually did that last year.
Yeah.
And I was told that, we're working on it, but your center nurses have to agree to it. Well, I went to all the center nurses and they said, this would be great, would love to have it. So that barrier was overcome. And then from that point on, they said, well, we'll put that on the fast track and look at it. And then wouldn't you know it, like 2 or 3 weeks later, we had a transplant. So, I'm not involved that heavily with it. I was just curious though, because it just seems like here it is, this wonderful thing, and not everybody has equal access to it, or they might have access to it indirectly, but they truly do not. There's blockades there preventing that from happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Piggybacking on that, we have a patient with our support group out in California who was being treated at the VA hospital, and he asked to be put on next stage dialysis, and they said they had never heard of it. So through a new VA rule, he was able to be transferred to another nephrologist and ultimately receive next stage dialysis. Even there's a new rule in the VA that if we can't provide it, then you can go somewhere else. And then the same thing happened with his transplant. He ended up getting a non-VA transplant under the same auspices. So apparently the VA doesn't go to the same meetings as everybody.
Thank you.
Well, to be fair, there are VAs that do use it.
Yeah.
The same as where you're at. In Pittsburgh, they're very robust.
Well, it hasn't gone west yet.
Yeah, but same thing for standard dialysis.
Okay, last question
one.
so that we can have time.
Am I understanding you to say that the, next to me, the Nocturnal, it does not involve like a lot of bags? I've done PD before, and I all of a sudden totally lost my living room to storage of bags. So are you saying that the next stage Nocturnal does not involve the bags?
Are you talking about the PD system that we're developing?
Right.
Oh, yes. So that's correct. Pre-mixed dialysate fluid is replaced by concentrate. So it's a dramatic reduction. Then it's mixed at point of use. So there are bags of concentrate, but they're much smaller.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your participation, and I'd like to encourage you again, if you have any questions that you haven't asked at the end of the session, the presenters will remain here for a few minutes, so feel free to come up and ask them questions. But the next presentation is by Dr. Jeff Lawson and Dr. Shannon Dahl, both from Humacyte, about exciting new tissue regeneration. Dr. Lawson.
So thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation, and thank you for inviting us to speak. I'm going to try with Shannon, and I'll say something about that in a second, but to tell you, we'll try to tell you a short version of a long story, about 20 years of work, and it's symbolic, as I was thinking about this, that Shannon Dahl, who's going to be co-speaking with me, first to give her background, she's from MIT, so you can tell she's really smart. And then she came to Duke and did her PhD in biomedical engineering, and then was one of the co-founders of this company that we're so excited about, trying to grow human tissue. And now she's transitioned from some of the scientific roles at the company into a lot of the roles that allow us to get this approved in Washington, D.C., and it's one of the reasons that you are so important to us, because we need support to help get our technologies now approved and ultimately paid for, as many of the other speakers have highlighted today. So that's Shannon. She's going to step in for me in a minute, but I have a question. How many of you or your loved ones have actually been on hemodialysis, if you don't mind a show of hands? Yeah, don't be embarrassed if you are. Okay. And how many of you, having been on hemodialysis, either had a fistula or a catheter or a graft? Okay. And how many of you had a problem with a fistula or a catheter or a graft while you were on dialysis? So that's what we're about right now, is we're about trying to fix that. So we want to make that better for all of you people who've had to struggle with your fistulas not maturing, or your grafts getting infected, or having to live on a perm cath because your vascular access surgeon couldn't get something to work. And I can say that personally because I have been a vascular access surgeon at Duke for the last 20 years, struggling with the patients that are struggling to get their access to work. And so this is a very personal and important project for myself. And in fact, having worked with Shannon on this as a project when we started this at Duke in the 90s, our two laboratories, the laboratory that she was training in and my laboratory, started working on this project, and have it turn into something that's now not only become a company, but a product, and a product that may change the lives of people like yourselves, is really inspiring for us. And that's why I've transitioned my sort of full-time job as a vascular surgeon now to becoming the chief medical officer at Humacyte, is to get the blood vessels shown on this title slide out of my fat hands, and those are my fat hands in that picture, implanting the first of these blood vessels in a patient in the United States, and into the hands of everyone else who could use it, and into the hands or arms or legs of people like yourselves. And that's what our story is going to be about today. The other thing that's really exciting is we think this is just the beginning. So we're starting to make these blood vessels for people in need of dialysis. We already feel relatively confident we can use these same blood vessels or the same platform to help the blood vessels in your legs, those people who have PAD, or someday the blood vessels in your heart. And other people who may be a lot smarter than us may be able to take this kind of platform technology of growing human tissue and make more complex organs, someday making something like a kidney itself. So that's where this is really the beginning of a great, great story, and I'd like to share it with you. So the product which we're developing currently is called Humasil, and we call it groundbreaking innovation, but what we're really simply trying to do at this point is make a human blood vessel, and a blood vessel that can function as a dialysis fistula in an arm of a patient who needs one. By way of disclaimer, because we are in clinical development, I have to tell you that we can't make any claims at this point. We are actively studying this in patients now in the United States, in Israel, in England, Poland, Portugal. I think those are our countries, and Germany. And nothing that we say about this product currently can be perceived as a claim with respect to the regulatory position of the FDA. We can't tell you how this is going to work because we're still studying it. So it's important to remember that, but we're just trying to tell you what we've learned to date and what we think it might be potentially in the future. So what are we going to do? I'm going to tell you about the current options for vascular access, and then I'm going to transition to Shannon, and she's going to tell you some of the sort of science behind the technology. And then we're going to transition again, because this is a team, and we want to be symbolic of a team, because it's been a team developing it, and we want to have you join our team in moving this forward. And I'm going to talk about the clinical part of what we've done with patients to date, and then Shannon's going to transition to the end and close about where we need to go with respect to approval and some of the empowerment we need to do in Washington, D.C. So life cycle, for those of you who have been on dialysis, you know there are hemodialysis, at least, there are pretty much 3 ways that you can live on dialysis, knowing your blood needs to get washed in a machine safely at least 3 times a week, maybe 5 or 6 times a week if you do home hemo. And unfortunately, you have to touch usually all of these different access modalities currently. And what's interesting about vascular access, those of you may not know the history, but Dr. Kolff invented dialysis machines in the 40s But it wasn't until we started to figure out how to do the vascular access right that people could be sustained on dialysis reliably. And so it was the invention of some of these vascular access techniques that allowed people to actually live on dialysis, because otherwise you couldn't get the blood out of your body and get it washed in a machine. And so that didn't really happen until the 60s. And it was when we could keep patients alive who, after their kidneys had failed, allowed us to begin to do the first transplantations. And so you couldn't do a transplant if you couldn't keep somebody alive after their kidneys had failed. And so it's vascular access that was a huge inflection point in allowing both transplantation and sustainable dialysis to move forward. That being said, we know you can dialyze with a catheter. A lot of patients initiate with a catheter. We know catheters are cumbersome. You can't shower. They get infected a lot. They clot a lot, and predictably you have to get them fixed every 3 or 6 months. Some people get lucky and they last a long time, but most people don't. So it's our least favorable mode of dialysis. The contra to that is a fistula. Everybody says, oh, you got to get a fistula. The problem is only about 50 or 60% of you will ultimately successfully get a fistula. And many of you will go through many procedures with guys like me coming back and forth, trying to hope one day your fistula will mature, until one day we eventually give up, and then we put in what's called a graft. And a graft is a synthetic tube that we put in your arm. And it works, but it also predictably fails. It pretty much predictably fails about once a year. And the worst kind of failure is when it gets infected. And when it gets infected, then we have to go back and do a new surgery, take it out, give you a new catheter, and hope you didn't get a bad infection in the rest of your body. And so what we're trying to do effectively is make something that functions like a fistula, like your own tissue, doesn't get infected like your own tissue, but I can implant it reliably like I can implant a graft, so I know it's going to work when I put it in your arm. And that's the sweet spot of what we're trying to do with this regenerative medicine, is make a blood vessel for you that's prematured, that'll work when it goes in your arm. And so I'm going to transition for a second, and Shannon's going to tell you about regenerative medicine, and then this technology, and then I'll tell you about some of the clinical care that we're doing to date. So Shannon?
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks to all of you for having us here today. So what is regenerative medicine? It's the process of replacing, engineering, or regenerating human cells, tissues, or organs to restore or establish normal function. This field has really grown. So about 20 years ago, there weren't many clinical trials, but now there's approximately 600 trials in cell therapy. And the number of engineered tissues that's advancing into clinical trials is growing. Humasil fits in this bucket of engineered tissues. We're in late-stage clinical trials right now, phase 3 trials, and that puts us at the forefront of advancing these bioengineered tissues to patients. When we set out to design these tissues, it was really important to us to ensure that they would be readily available for patients at the time of need. So I'm going to tell you about the process of how we make that happen. First, we start with a tissue donor. From vascular tissue, we're able to isolate vascular cells and create a cell bank. From this cell bank, we can grow many tissues for many patients. When we're ready to grow the tissues, we take a vial and seed them onto a tube made of the same material as degradable suture. And over the growth phase, the cells multiply and secrete human proteins, forming a tissue. And during that time, that degradable material degrades away. So we're left with a human tissue. But we don't want to put the donor cells into the patient. So the last step in our process is to remove those donor cells, leaving us with a human acellular vessel. This vessel can be shipped to hospital sites and stored there so that it's readily available off the shelf at the time of surgery is needed. The vessels are 6 millimeters in diameter and about 40 centimeters in length, and mechanically, they're very similar to normal blood vessels, your own human vein or artery. One of the really exciting things is that while there are no cells in these bioengineered vessels when we implant them, we've observed the recipient cells growing in over time. So for example, here we can see cells which stain brown in the wall of the vessel. and also lining the lumen, which is the blood-facing surface of the vessel. And these cells that are crawling in are the same cell types that are found in your natural vasculature. So these bioengineered tissues may have the potential to become the patient's own living tissue with time. I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff to talk through our clinical data.
Thanks again, Shannon. So it's quite remarkable to think that we can implant a structure that we've made in the lab, initially made in the lab in North Carolina, and now figured out how to scale up and make them in a bioprocessing facility that we outsource currently in Colorado. But we can make that structure, ship it to clinical sites, implant it into an individual, and have it become that individual's own tissue. It's really quite remarkable. Yeah, it's something I never quite envisioned when I started my career as a physician and a scientist and a surgeon, but it's really happening. And this is an example, and I'm going to tell you about some of the clinical work we've done to date. So different, but similar to the first slide that we showed, I'm going to tell you the work that we've done to date to get this through clinical trials, and hopefully ultimately to get it to regulatory approval so it can be widely disseminated, again, initially for dialysis, and then ultimately we'd like to think for vascular reconstruction for any part of your body, particularly legs for people who would be at risk for diabetes and dialysis. So this is an example of the first US implant. Sorry for anybody who's offended, but if you have had to undergo vascular access procedures, this is what we have to do. This was done in the Duke operating room by myself. This is a patient from Danville, Virginia, where we implanted the first tissue engineered blood vessel. And this was actually June 5th, 2013. It was the first US implant. So that's 2013, that wasn't yesterday. That was over 3 years ago, pushing 3.5. And the first implant done outside the US was actually December 5th, 2012, almost 4 years ago. And so we've done implants now both in the United States and in Europe. And we've done 60 of those in dialysis patients under what was called our phase 2 program. And I'll share with you some of that. But this is what the vessel looked like when it was implanted. And this is what the vessel looked like 18 months later after it had not only healed in, but you can tell that with the cannulation sites, it's being used for dialysis in this case. And this patient had been undergoing routine dialysis through the vessel that actually we made. And then we implanted in for all practical purposes as a physician. I don't know if you've had a basilic vein transposition or where it feels like your own vein as opposed to a piece of plastic in your arm because it's got that softness of and from an exam standpoint. So it feels like a fistula. And one of the remarkable things from our clinical data, which we recently were able to publish in The Lancet, so that data, which was basically a conglomeration of the 60 patients that had undergone about a 2-year experience with the vessels, we were able to demonstrate some really, really remarkable things that were then published in one of the most reputable medical journals in the world, but that they had both enduring patency, but the other thing that was quite remarkable is we saw almost no infections. So as opposed to the synthetic materials that we use to put in, and because they're synthetic, your body not only doesn't really react to it properly, but it's always at risk if you get a bad stick of then getting subsequently infected. We only had one patient out of the whole over 100 plus years of follow-up of the aggregate that looked like they had an infection. So it's as lower than a natural fistula rate. And we had really good enduring, what we call enduring patency, which means that the vessels stayed open for a long time. And just to share with you what a little of those results look like without being too scientific, the other thing that we had to demonstrate, is demonstrated with this bar graph, is those are the patient's antibody levels. Those of you who've had to be screened for transplants get screened for these things called PRAs, or panel reactive antibodies. We had to make sure if we're putting a human tissue into some individual, we didn't sensitize them from that human tissue. So it's really important, and the FDA, when we work with the FDA, it's really important for us to demonstrate that continuously, that this tissue we're making isn't gonna, not only aren't you gonna react to it, but we're not gonna sensitize you so you won't be able to get a kidney transplant someday in the future. And to date, we haven't seen any of that by the way the tissues are manufactured. So again, quite remarkable. The other thing that we've been able to demonstrate is that it's structurally stable. Some of the other attempts at tissue engineering once it gets put into something, especially something stressful like your circulation, it dilates or it falls apart over time. And as you can see from the upper panel on the right, when we followed the material with ultrasounds over months and months and months, it doesn't change in the size or the shape at all. So it doesn't fall apart. Your body doesn't react to it. It doesn't melt away. So it has very robust structural stability, at least what we've been able to see to date. And then the lower panel on the right, you can see what is flow rates. And that's the blood flow. And if you know you're going to run a dialysis machine at 500 mils a minute or 400 mils a minute, we have to have flow rates in our vessels that are, in this case, pretty much about 1 liter a minute. So you've got more than enough room, and they have very stable, consistent flow rates over time. And then just to show you what this other thing that's important, if you're going to do surgery on an individual, you want to do it as infrequently as possible. In spite of the odd thing that that's what I get paid to do, I really don't want to operate on you every week if I can avoid it, right? So we care about what's called patency. Patency means how long the vessel stays open, either by itself or after we intervene on it with doing an angioplasty. And then in this case, the red bars are our vessel staying open in patients' arms at 6 months and 12 months, compared to the historical experience with the synthetic vessels that we know are at risk for either getting infected or getting those blood clots in them. And we think that it is the fact that this becomes a natural tissue that doesn't get infected and does have that lining that Shannon spoke of, that endothelial cell layer that we know prevents your blood from clotting, of why we think this not only is more durable, but potentially clots less and gets infected less. So it's very exciting data for us, and it continues to come forward as we get more and more clinical experience. And so in summary, we know we can make off-the-shelf vessels for people. We actually know we can do it. We now have them in not only our 60 initial phase 2 patients, but as I mentioned, we've now started a global phase 3 clinical trial. We're the only tissue-engineered product that's in phase 3 clinical production at this point. We know they're resistant to clotting. They don't appear to develop an immune reaction. We've had excellent safety results with our phase 2 program to date. And just this spring, we initiated our phase 3 program, initially in the United States. And as of today, I can tell you we've already enrolled 69 patients with a target of 350 by next summer. And if that goes off with the help and support of the patients and the physicians that we're working with, we might be able to submit for getting this approved for you and your loved ones. Shannon?
So our next steps are to complete the enrollment and follow-up in our phase 3 comparator trial, and then to summarize that data and submit it to the FDA to seek approval. We are patient-focused, and we'd really like to have your input as we continue the development. We'd also like to have your help spreading the word about this technology, which we believe may have the potential to provide better outcomes for hemodialysis patients. If you'd like to have your voice heard, please reach out to the leadership of this organization. We've been visiting with patient advocacy groups and physician advocacy groups and lobbying groups, and we'll continue to reach out to those partners and solicit feedback as we move forward. We'd like to close by thanking the patients who have participated in our clinical studies. And if you'd like to see more information, please look at our website, humacyte.com. Thank you.
If this gets solved, this will solve a lot of problems that many of the patients have. So I wish them the couple of questions.
Are you looking for more
Oh,
centers?
one moment. No, please, there's a big room.
This is truly a very exciting technology, and the benefits are huge. The question is, are you looking for more centers to enroll?
Should I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So that's a yes and no. Currently, with the phase 3 program, the center portfolio that we have to date is pretty mature in the sense of what we have and what we have budgeted to run. We're trying to run it in about 40 centers in 6 countries. enroll 350 patients for a global approval. But we are doing, as this whole program continues to grow and move forward, we're doing initially a pivotal trial against PTFE or against standard dialysis grafts, but we're actively pursuing doing a second trial that will take our vessel as a prematured fistula and go head-to-head against people at risk for having their fistulas non-mature. And we're also opening up 2 U.S. vascular arterial trials that will be for lower leg reconstruction, both for PAD and for trauma. And that's just getting started. So there's a lot of opportunity. And so if you or any of your colleagues would like to make us aware of a site and you'd be enthusiastic, we always love to have a running list, because you never know when we're going to need another one. But thank you.
As I said, we'll have time to ask questions at the end of the session. Terry, can you come
Yes, of course.
for the next presentation? I'm not sure where the presentation is.
Oh, I don't know either.
It's in the laptop.
Where's
We're going to switch
Diana?
out computers, I thought.
Oh. Sorry.
Diana, or somebody, where's Diana? They need the next presentation on the laptop? Hakeem doesn't know where the PowerPoint is? I guess so.
Yeah, they're switching computers.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So as I have my expert right here before me, I'll go ahead and kick off. Good afternoon. Thank you. I feel at home. I live in Chicago, but from Texas, so I'm closer to home. So in Texas, we have this thing called call and response. So I call, you respond. So we'll practice it again. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Dana Mendenhall, and it is a privilege on behalf of the Baxter Healthcare Organization to partner with AAKP, and most importantly, to stand before you and to say thank you. At Baxter, our mission is to save and sustain lives, and each of you, whether you're a patient, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're a member of a clinical team, are the fuel. You're the energy in why we do what we do on a day-to-day basis. Baxter wants me to tell you that we are committed to the renal space. We have a footprint in each of the areas of dialysis, but today we're going to talk about the value of home. And the best demonstration that we could give you of our commitment is actually just to show and talk to you about the device that we have recently had FDA approved and have released to the market. So I'll start there. It works. Good. Alrighty. Right here before you, I won't take the time to walk through it now, but as Dr. Hakeem said, I will be around afterwards to walk through any demonstrations with the device. But the AMIA with shear source device is right here. You may have thought it was a printer. You may have even thought it belonged to our AV person, but it doesn't. It is the new AMIA with shear source device. No problem. No problem. Great. So what is AMIA with shear source? AMIA is an innovative APD cycler that has a shear source connectivity platform. AMIA is the first FDA-approved talking cycler that is designed to provide a user-friendly interface both through audio and visual reinforcement during the home peritoneal dialysis experience. It is designed with the confidence of the patient to perform dialysis therapy at home. And while the patient is confidently performing dialysis at home, that data is being exchanged through a cloud and being shared through our shear source connectivity platform so that your clinical team knows what's happening, They know if it's happening in alignment with the prescription and the programs in the device. And your clinical team has the ability to remotely, whether it's from a cell phone, whether it's from a desktop, to make the necessary changes to ensure that you are spending your time living life and not concerned about any of the errors or flags that may come up, challenges that may come up in your dialysis treatment. Let's talk about the cycler first, because that's the most important piece here. Again, it's the first and only talking cycler. The nice thing about this is it's step-by-step direction. AMIA is your partner at home. It's not going to allow you to move forward without properly completing the step that it asks you to complete at that point. So for instance, if it asks you to open the front door and to load your cassette, and it is loaded upside down, it's not going to allow you to move forward to load the patient line and to make sure that there's no air in the patient line, which we know can cause a lot of pain. It's going to make you follow the steps in that order to protect you and give you the confidence that the dialysis treatment is being performed as prescribed. So this ease of use is reinforced through voice guidance, through touchscreen navigation, and there are animations there. There are pictures. So the voice and the pictures are helping you to move forward and have a confident experience as you dialyze at home. The next step are the recommended techniques. These are the techniques, again, that are going to be reinforced by the voice guidance system. And these animations are going to reinforce it visually to help you walk through the steps and to reduce contamination, to reduce any violation to aseptic technique. Again, keeping you safe and helping you to perform dialysis confidently. It is a personalized experience that's shared. Your clinical team has the ability from a desktop or a mobile phone to go in and to understand exactly what has happened after your dialysis treatment is completed, to make the necessary changes on the spot so you don't have to wait to go back to the office for your monthly visit. It can be done on demand. And then lastly, any issues that need to be resolved from a patient standpoint. If you are sleeping and you roll over on your patient line and therefore impede flow, AMIA is going to gently wake you up with the noise, and they're going to walk you through step by step to be able to resolve that issue that you're having with the cycler until it's resolved. And if for some reason you can't, there is a button here that's voice guided. It's the middle of the night. It's 2 a.m. You don't want to look for your manual. You don't want to have to lift the cycler to find the serial number. You're going to simply pick up the phone, dial the number, and you're going to hold that button down. And AMIA is going to tell our 24-hour technical service center exactly everything they need to know to help you walk through the challenge that you're having so that you can quickly resolve it and, again, get back to living, get back to sleeping, and not dealing with the challenges of dialysis. The share source piece. Now, you're at home. The big thing that you need to know as patients about share source is that your clinical team is right there with you remotely. Again, this is a platform. It's a two-way web-based connection. So the cycler will talk to the cloud, which talks to your clinical team, and the clinical team can talk to the cloud, which talks to your cycler and you. So if there are any changes that need to be made, you don't have to take the cycler into the clinic. You don't have to wait 30 to 45 days into your next visit. It is done in the comfort of the office or the home of the clinical team, web-based, to make those changes quick and easy, again, to get you on the path of moving forward. On-demand access. At any point that your clinical team wants a historical picture of your dialysis treatments, whether it's that day, whether it's that month, whether it's that year, they have that, again, at a desktop or on a mobile phone. And those reports are available, again, to be downloaded and then transferred into an electronic medical record. And then the nice thing about this, we know that dialysis patients are survivors. We know that they are independent, and we want to enhance that. We want to serve as a catalyst that empowers that independence. And so many of you know how to alter your prescriptions. Maybe on the day that you go in the office and you need to test, you're going to take a little bit less of one fluid, say Extranil, or maybe more of Dianil. Or maybe, like me, you went out on your birthday and you had a great time, and you woke up the next morning little bit full, and so therefore you had to keep that in mind and adjust your dialysis a little bit. Where you're going to have the ability to have 4 customizable programs, so you don't have to call the clinic. All you have to do is when the programs are set up, you can name them birthday celebration, gone out too late, office test day, whatever you need to customize them to fit into your life to reflect the changes and the flexibility in your dialysis treatments that you already do on a day-to-day basis. Again, our goal is simply here to be a catalyst to help and to simplify the dialysis process so that you could focus on the other things that you want to focus on in life. And we can do that through 4 customizable device programs, again, that can be changed remotely. Security is always important. I think we woke up this morning, if you caught a glimpse of the news, if you have mail, they guaranteed you that you probably have been hacked. You've probably heard that today on the news. Security, your safety, both from a dialysis perspective and also from a data perspective, is extremely important and one of the highest priorities to Baxter. So when we think about the security, the data primarily is encrypted when it talks from the cycler to the cloud to the clinic, and the reverse happens. This data is encrypted. And so therefore, the chance of being able to undo that data is difficult. I would not stand before you and tell you it's impossible with the things that are happening in our world today, but we're taking every step necessary. We are following all of the HIPAA, the high-tech, the FDA, the CFR Part 11 requirements to protect not only your treatment, but also the data that is produced as a result of that treatment. It's also important to know that any Baxter employee that works with this platform or any platform that is involved with patient data receives HIPAA training on an annual basis and on an as-needed basis to ensure that we are abreast of the most current standards. So your safety is always priority with us as well. When we think about the AMIA with shared source device, it's not simply just the device. It's not simply the clinical team. We want to be a better partner as we progress in the dialysis space to patients as well as to the clinical team and your providers. So we offer hands-on device training to providers as well as therapy-related products, tools, education. We take our clinical educators, which are subject matter experts as it relates to dialysis, and we share that knowledge with providers in the clinic. We act as a resource and a right arm to them to ensure that they are abreast of the most advanced technology available. And again, our clinical educators are here to focus on areas of improvement where we can assist the provider as they focus on your care and your health. From a patient standpoint, delivery and inventory services that we provide include not only offering the device, but bringing the products and solutions, the ancillary components, the solutions, bringing all of those things to your home, crossing your threshold, rotating them for you at your discretion, and then removing those same products when you have requested that we do so. We have a 24-hour technical services team that is there to assist you from a technical standpoint, should it be required, as well as an on-call home care services organization to help you predict your deliveries, predict your shipments, and any questions you may have about your prescription that we can then return to your clinic or to our pharmacist. And then our travel programs. Again, it's important to us that we focus on the dialysis challenges and enable you to focus on life. So we have a domestic travel program that enables patients to travel to over 180 countries. You tell us where you want to go, we'll ensure that those solutions are available and ready for you when you arrive. Alrighty, in the sake of time, I believe I have less than 5 minutes, so I just wanted to talk to you in terms of data. So we talked about this share source platform, and this is really from a clinician perspective and really empowering the clinical team to have the control proactively and not 30 to 45 days once you return back to the office. So because of share source, 82% of patients who are on the AMIA with share source cycler who would have otherwise had a potential treatment or prescription change in their first month, after their first month, are able to do so within the first month because of the visibility that this platform offers. 24% of those patients on the cycler had 3 or more program changes within the first month. Well, what does that mean? That means that with the support of your clinical team, you're able to level out those prescriptions much sooner so that you have a greater success rate in the first 90 days, again, of stabilizing therapy and getting back to life. The ShareSource Clinical Portal gives clinicians the ability, again, remotely to program and to adjust prescriptions as needed. And then from the perspective of how could it help treat patients, by knowing more about them and knowing who is and who is not adherent to therapy. I know the nephrologist here with me. Your nephrologist wants to know if you are not adherent for whatever reason, for whatever challenges you are facing, they want to intervene as quickly as possible to be able to help you, again, focus on life and to work around the challenges that may be associated with early initiation of dialysis therapy. So ShareSource is an in-home support tool to help that happen. 25% of the patients we know, because of the ability to see in the home through the cloud, missed at least 1 treatment within the first week of therapy initiation. Why is that important? Catch it early, diagnose it early, and the path becomes smoother. 29% of patients didn't complete their prescribed treatment by greater than 100 minutes within the first week. So the prescription as written was not completed. ShareSource has the ability for your clinical team to point out potential challenge areas and to help them intervene sooner, to be a support mechanism for you. And again, 11% of the patients did not complete their prescribed dwell time by more than 10% during the first week of therapy. These are all important indicators that help create a very successful path for home dialysis moving forward, and they allow us to do it on demand and to do it very soon in the therapy initiation process, and not at the point where you become frustrated and want to look at other therapy options and are not spending time focusing on life, but are focusing on dialysis. So as I take my seat, I want to show you a very quick video that kind of sums up what I've shared.
Innovative remote connectivity technology is shaping a new standard of chronic patient care in the home. Remote technology collects medical and other forms of health data from individuals in one location, such as their home, and electronically transmits that information securely to healthcare professionals in a different location for assessment and recommendations. It is estimated that remote patient monitoring will save the global healthcare industry up to $36 billion in the future. For patients with end-stage renal disease, Baxter has developed ShareSource, a cloud-based two-way remote connectivity platform. ShareSource is currently available in select markets with the Omnia and HomeChoice Claria automated peritoneal dialysis cyclers. ShareSource transmits a patient's treatment data after completion of a dialysis session to the secure ShareSource platform. Healthcare providers can then access detailed information about a specific patient's treatment history, giving them the ability to make clinical decisions in a more timely manner. The ShareSource connectivity platform offers healthcare professionals a customizable dashboard that can be organized based on the clinic's needs, the ability to monitor a patient's individual treatment history with more timely access, help tracking of specific issues or events that may arise during home dialysis treatment, and the ability to remotely and securely adjust a patient's device program. For the patient, the ShareSource two-way web-based connection offers patients a way to record home treatment data and manage home supplies. Data from the dialysis device is automatically collected and transmitted for their renal care team to access. ShareSource was designed with data security in mind and meets regulatory requirements for privacy and security standards. Additionally, all data is encrypted. Ultimately, ShareSource was designed to allow healthcare providers and home patients to stay connected with health information from their different locations, allowing for more timely therapy decisions.
Again, thank thank you, and thank you on behalf of Baxter for the opportunity to partner with you.
Hi, I
Well,
just have a real quick.
Sure. These are exciting times. Advances in hemodialysis at home, advances in peritoneal dialysis at home, and advances in areas which have really needed a lot of attention in terms of neurovascular access. So thank you for all the presenters. I'll ask one question, but then I would also invite you to come up here since the time is already short and ask as many questions as you'd like without keeping everybody else there.
Thank
So
you.
please
I'll
go
just
ahead.
be real brief. I was
Please, no.
curious, does the Source One cycler there have, in the event of a power outage, a battery backup or some sort of thing to back up, like if you're in the middle of a treatment or if it's interrupted somehow, power-wise?
She said source one, I think. So the AMIA would share. Yes, ma'am. It actually does have a backup battery. The battery is designed to collect data from the current treatment. So if, in fact, there's a natural disaster, a power outage, the battery is designed to complete that treatment to lock it in, and it lasts for up to 8 hours.